Thanks for tuning in. This is Roger Lazzarino with Mid-Florida Realty and FloridaDownPaymentAssistance.com. And today we're going to talk about our builder friends and what you can really expect when you actually walk into a new builder's subdivision. First, I want to say that most builders are pretty fair and lawful about their fees. However, there are some builders and their lenders and title companies that aren't so fair. It may be lawful, but it doesn't mean that these fees are very ethical. Generally be cautious of builders who own their own mortgage and or title companies. A lot of times a builder will own both of them. It's only my opinion, but even though it's legal, I think it's a serious conflict of interest with the general public's well-being. So buyer beware. Before you sign that big contract and give the builder a deposit, you better get a sample final closing disclosure reflecting one of the builder's similar products in that subdivision. If the builder's lender has already pulled your credit, you'll also be able to and need to get a loan estimate drawn up by the builder's lender. A closing disclosure and a loan estimate are two different documents. The sample closing disclosure will have all of the builder's and title company's fees, where the loan estimate may only have the lender's fees. In other words, the loan estimate is only a subset of the closing disclosure. These tasks should be completed before you sign a purchase contract or give away an earnest money deposit. Once the builder has that earnest money deposit, it's almost impossible to get it back, no matter what you think the builder's rep and lender said. While technically it's your money, they aren't going to give it back to you if you want out of the contract, because now they have the money. When you walk into the office before anything happens, here's the questions that they're going to fire at you. Have you already been pre-approved by a lender? If you say no, then they say, well, let's get you pre-qualified. At this point, you don't even know if you want any of their houses yet. They could care less what you think at this point. They just want to get your credit pulled. That's confrontation number one for you, and you just walked in the door. If you have your own realtor, the good ones run interference for you and deflect a lot of the builder's agent's questions. That's another reason that you would want to bring your own realtor. They'll want to pull your credit to see if you're credit worthy to purchase one of their homes. That's their first goal in this conversation, and that's so true of every new subdivision that you walk into. If you have been pre-approved by an outside lender, they might ask you for the pre-approval letter. This only tells them that somebody thinks your credit scores are good enough to move forward, but probably nothing about how much you can spend every month on a house. There's a 99% chance that they're not going to let you use your own lender anyway. What they'll say is, we don't care what lender you use, but we won't pay any of your closing costs unless you use our lender. Be prepared for that statement because it's a certainty. No matter how awesome the loan program that your lender has for your specific needs, you're not going to be allowed to use it. Unfortunately, many times this costs the buyer many thousands of dollars, but it's hard to walk away from that shiny new house. So you have to be careful. If the builder's lender doesn't have the loan program or note rate that you want, it might be better to use your own lender and try to have your realtor negotiate some of the closing costs. Don't let the builder's rep fool you. If you have a great loan product or a great note rate and the builders can't match it, have your agent insist that they take your offer to the management and let them decide. Believe me, everything is negotiable if you have the credit and the wherewithal to purchase the house. The builder makes a whole lot more money building and selling houses than they do getting some part of the loan in whatever form. Keep in mind that the closing costs will normally be between 2.5% and 4% of the loan, depending on the price of the property taxes, property insurance, and HOA fees, and CDD fees for that matter. Again, that's why you need to get a sample of the closing disclosure from the builder to make sure you know what the builder's and title fees are really going to be. An example is going to be under a non-builder owned home or a resale on about a $250,000 house. Your closing costs are going to be about 3%. And that's going to include the prepaids, which is the taxes, the insurance, and all of the relative closing costs. Unfortunately, with builders' properties, you're never quite sure until the very end of the process, which is usually a day or two before closing. If your personal realtor isn't there with you on that initial visit, you're not going to be allowed to use a realtor. That's also a certainty. Again, you'll be at a disadvantage, and the builder is not going to be discounting the house just because you don't have a realtor. That's also a certainty. The next problem you have to deal with is the 50-plus page builder's purchase contract that's packed with legalese and gotchas. Unless you're an attorney, you have no idea what the contract says. Builders reps always say, "Don't worry, it's all good." But that's when you think to yourself, "I should have brought my own realtor." But it's too late now because you can't bring one in. These aren't documents that you skim over, or worse yet, don't even read. It's true that if you don't agree to these terms, you won't be buying one of that builder's properties. But you may not want to after you know what the contract really says. Remember, these are enforceable contracts and your earnest money is at stake. These documents are legal contracts and you will be required to perform on them as soon as you sign them. This includes all HOA restrictions, so you better understand them. Do not sign anything or put down a deposit until you know for sure what you're getting into, because now that earnest money is the builder's. In that big contract, be looking for possible builder's fees or subdivision capitalization charges or other terms you're not familiar with. This is another way of adding to the cost of the property without the buyer really understanding the charge. Let's take the mysterious builder's fee. And most builders don't do this, but some of them do. So for example, if the builder's fee is 1% of a $300,000 house, that equals $3,000 that's added to the buyer's closing cost. And that's not the price of the house, so you can't finance it in with a loan. That's part of your closing cost. Most builders don't have this fee, but some do. So know what you're getting into before you sign that contract and hand over that earnest money deposit. One of the reasons a builder puts that ridiculous fee into the closing costs is because the property probably won't appraise if it was part of the purchase price. Of course, this seriously increases your closing cost. On the day of closing, you better have that cash to close to cover this little builder's profit present, or you won't be closing that day. If the builder owns the title company, another possible hidden issue is what sort of ridiculous fees is the builder and the title company going to charge the buyer at closing. Builders generally don't like sending the periodic loan disclosures to the buyer's realtors because the good realtors are going to question any irregularities and tell the buyers what's happening. Whatever the builders send to you, send it to your realtor for clarification. You don't know what you're looking at, but your agent should, and they should explain it to you. And if they don't know, they need to call the builder's agent and find out what's really going on. If you don't have a realtor on your side of the transaction, the builder, the builder's lender, and the builder's title company has one less thing to worry about. The buyer won't understand what's happening and will think it's normal. My advice is to bring a good realtor with you when you first walk in to the new subdivision. It doesn't cost you anything to have somebody on your side. Another unnecessary and ridiculous fee might be a courier fee. Well, we haven't had couriers since the late 90s, when there wasn't any way to get the loan documents to the bank other than a courier. Today, the documents are emailed to the title company and the direct lenders. Couriers aren't used, but you may still see that unnecessary fee on some builders' closing disclosures. You may be paying $150, $300, or who knows how much for who knows what in unnecessary closing costs. Get that sample closing disclosure and loan estimate before you sign anything. If you don't pay all those mysterious fees at closing, you won't get that house, and the builder keeps all your earnest money deposit because you didn't close. And yeah, that really does happen. So know what you're getting into in the very beginning. Thank you again for tuning in to one of our little seminars. This one involves builders, and there's 2 other parts to this seminar, so be sure to listen to that. Our best advice is to bring a realtor with you who will represent you and properly do it. Anyway, if we can help, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 863-800-1011. We've got agents all throughout the state of Florida.